perfect prospect pairing. Ohio State's national championship winning quarterback Will Howard will be the perfect prospect for an AFC North team. We're going to discuss this and more coming up next.
You are Locked On NFL Draft, your daily podcast covering the NFL Draft. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back to the Locked On NFL Draft Podcast, your daily podcast covering your favorite draft prospects, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm your boy, Damian Parson. I am a offensive draft analyst over with Bleacher Report. And guys, you know who it is. That's my guy, Mr. LSU himself, Keih Sanchez. He is a director of scouting over at the Draft Network. And again, he's the 2019 national champion with those LSU Tigers. Thank you for tapping in with us each and every day, being our everydays. We have a fun show, perfect pairings for prospects. Will Howard, he's going to the AFC North, or maybe he's going to the AFC West. We're going to talk about that. Tetairoa McMillan heading to the NFC East, and then Matthew Golden lands also in the AFC. So we're going to talk about some of our perfect fits for these prospects. But before we get into all of that, this episode is brought to you by PrizePicks. Go to PrizePicks.com/LockedOnNFL and use the code all lowercase LockedOnNFL to win $50 instantly when you play $5. Will Howard, Keith, a young man that is from, I believe it is called Downingtown, Pennsylvania.
Yes, sir.
Downingtown, Pennsylvania, Ohio State quarterback, 23 years old. He'll be 24 around probably a little bit after the start of the season here in 2025. 6'4", 235 pounds, over 4,000 yards passing, 35 passing touchdowns, 10 interceptions on the season, national champion. And when you're talking about perfect pairings, Keith, you brought this up, and there was a team you threw out for Will Howard, and I don't really mind it. And there's been some buzz coming from the Senior Bowl about it, and that's the Pittsburgh Steelers. Tell us why you feel like Will Howard is the perfect pairing for Pittsburgh.
Yeah, DP, you know, sometimes I like to shake the table a little bit, right? Rattle the room. And you know, I've liked Will Howard for probably we've talked to the Locked On family about him for maybe about 2 months now, right? I'll say at the very beginning of the college football playoffs, and then, you know, into this point right here. Why I think it could be a good pairing. One, the storyline matches, right? The guy's from Pennsylvania going to Pittsburgh. You know, then I look at the talent, right? And I wrote this before, but he reminds me of a version of Ben Roethlisberger, right? Big quarterback, big arm, strong, can stand in a pocket, but he's also just a little bit more mobile than what Ben Roethlisberger is. I think the other side of that, hey, does he fit the culture, right? Will Howard has shown that he's tough, right? He's tough, he's gritty, he'll grind it out. We have to remember that the Cinderella story of the Ohio State team, right? It started with them being a disappointment for majority of the year, right? At the very beginning, you question, can Will Howard even throw the football, because he was handing the football off. They played cupcake games the first 5 games, right? And then they lost that game against Oregon. And one reason why I bought into Will was because I listened to him. I think it was on College Game Day. And he talked about after they lost that game, and I think he just went into the they made it back home, right? Flew from Oregon to Ohio State. They made it back home, and he just went in the indoor facility and just laid down and just thought, right? Like, man, I can't do it. Because remember, he slid late and the clock ran out. And so he's had the pressure on him and has had to rebound, right? In entering the playoffs, people predict him to get upset. Nobody believed in him. And I just think that the talent, the arm talent is there. I keep saying, I'm going to say this too, he's the J.J. McCarthy of this draft. He's the guy that's going to consistently rise. He's going to throw the football, and people are going to say, oh, wait, outside of the actual system, this guy has his own set of tools and skill sets.
No, I mean, and like I said, 6'4", 235 pounds. He was brought in to be the difference maker on this team, right? Like when you had like Kyle McCord, who had an outstanding season for Syracuse. If Kyle McCord played the way he played at Syracuse, Ohio State, we'd never see Will Howard at Ohio State. You know what I mean? And he was brought in to get them over the hump and do what he did, help lead them to a national championship game. And once, like you said, once he hit the college football playoffs, felt like the training wheels were off. You know, for the most part, they still threw some manufactured stuff. Like Chip Kelly just does what Chip Kelly does.
Yeah,
but
100%.
like Will Howard was able to really play well. The connection between him and Jeremiah Smith, him and the Emeka Egbuka, hitting driving throws between the hashes in the middle of the field for first downs. Like, those are NFL plays, and that's why I liked him. I initially had a third round on him, even before we got to like because he didn't play great against Penn State, and then he had the Michigan game. And I was like, oh man, you know what I mean? Like, I don't know how this is going to end, but he rebounded really well in the CFP, and it's like I said, Keith, and it's crazy because when they got ready to play Penn State, he talked about the fact that they didn't recruit him, right? That's essentially the home team for him. He's from Pennsylvania. Penn State's in Pennsylvania. They didn't recruit him. So he had a chip on his shoulder because of the fact that the home state team didn't want him, and in that situation, that kind of led into how he looked in that game. He wanted to prove something against him. So putting him back home with the Steelers, like whether they bring back Russ on like a 1-year deal to be kind of that mentor, start the season. And if the moon ball ain't mooning, then we got to put the big 6'4", 235 kid in and let him run it, Keith. But he's also a guy that has experience, a guy that has thrown over 1,200 passes in college. Like, he's thrown over 1,200 passes. And when we look at what Jaden Daniels did, we looked at what Bo Nix has done. Like, these guys coming in with a lot of experience, like, that has helped. That helps these guys in the league, man.
Yeah, I agree. And part of the conversation is going to be that he's an older prospect, right? And I'll say this, that I disagree with that conversation when applied to quarterbacks. Because first of all, they're not running around at high, like it's not like they're wide receivers, corners, running backs, where they're running around at high speeds, right? And then also on top of that, we have enough sample size to where quarterbacks have started later in their career, and we can make the case that it's better for them, right? Aaron Rodgers, you got Jordan Love, he's starting late in his career. Tom Brady played till he was a senior at Michigan and sat a year, with New England. Like, we have enough case study situations, or even guys that's played a lot of football in the NFL, but didn't turn it on until recently. We talk about Sam Darnold, Geno Smith, Baker Mayfield, right? So the age thing, I have to be honest, I'm not factoring that in. I'm just not factoring that in. And I don't think it applies to quarterbacks. Now, if it was a different position, like I said, running backs and corners and wide receivers, and you're saying he's old, he's beat up, I'm like, I totally 100% get it. But if Will Howard, from a medical perspective, is perfectly fine, I'm not looking at him and saying, you know what, if he was 22, I would want him. And then if he's 24, I want no parts of him, right?
Yeah.
But I also look at it too, DP. I just think about back with that transition with Ben Roethlisberger, right, for the Pittsburgh Steelers. I think the first Super Bowl that the Steelers won, I think Ben Roethlisberger threw for under 100 yards. It was something crazy, right? And that's not the recipe to win in today's game. But what I'm saying is certain franchises understand how to insulate young quarterbacks better than other franchises, right? And if you could get Will Howard, if you're the Steelers, you may only have to move up maybe 5 picks, 10 picks, something like that, and you get to get the storyline plus the talent. And like you said, and you have the opportunity to sit him a year. I think it's home run, and then now you put it on, hey, can Will Howard be a good quarterback? I'll tell you what they need. Find a good offensive coordinator, Pittsburgh. That's the issue. Find a good offensive coordinator. They have a type, and their type is not good at offensive coordinator. So let's keep this thing going and flowing.
Well, hold on, Keith.
Okay,
hold on, man.
Go ahead.
So, like, to your point, I'm with you, and I want to throw out, because we talk about Pittsburgh. The one team, and it was the development that just happened, the Las Vegas Raiders hiring. So they got Pete Carroll as the head coach. He goes and hires Chip Kelly. Yeah. And I was like, you know what? And I tweeted this out. Some Raider fans were cool with it. Some of them like, I don't want him in the second round. Some people, there's a lot of fans that still think that Will Howard's a 4th round, 5th round prospect. I'm like, guys, I don't think he's going to be there. You know what I mean? Like Magic Johnson, I'm not going to be there. He's not going to be there 4th, 5th round. I think if Las Vegas, and like we did the mock draft yesterday, Keith, from Matt Miller, in that situation, unless it's something like that where Shador and Cam Ward fall to the Giants and the Raiders, if the Raiders don't have a quarterback at 6, I think that's what they're picking at. You go best player available, whether that's Tetairoa McMillan, a defensive tackle, corner, whatever. You go best player available. I'm perfectly fine selecting Will Howard in the second round. I say this: Will Howard, Cam Ward. People wonder, like, I heard people talking like, man, I wish Cam Ward was out here. Man, I wish Will Howard was out here last week when we were in Mobile. You know what? Both of them guys helped themselves by not showing up in Mobile. They helped themselves greatly by not showing up and being in that weird coaching situation that the other quarterbacks were in for the entire week. So I think the Raiders, I think the Pittsburgh Steelers is a good fit, and there's some traction there coming out of Mobile. Like they said, the Pittsburgh Steelers, they really like him. But I think the Raiders is a team to watch in day 2, unless he goes first round. Day 2, I think we can see Will Howard potentially in that black and silver because they can't run it back with Aiden O'Connell.
Yo, with DP, let's keep this thing going, man. And we're going to the NFC East. Yes, Tetairoa McMillan, where's his landing spot? We're going to talk about that coming up next.
Looking for tickets to your next big event? Maybe last-minute tickets to the big game next week. Whether it's a concert, a comedy show, or a sports game, finding the right ticket at the right price can be a headache. But with Gametime Picks, it's never been easier. Let me tell you how it works. With Gametime Picks, the app does all the hard work for you. It curates the best deals, so you don't have to waste time searching through endless ticket listings. And the best part, you're covered with Gametime's lowest price guarantee. If you find a better deal somewhere else, they'll refund 110% of the difference. Plus, your tickets are guaranteed to be delivered on time with easy cancellation options if something comes up. Ready to make your next event even better? Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, that's code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Download Gametime today. Last minute tickets, lowest prices guaranteed. Tetairoa McMillan heads to the NFC East, Keith. And you said when we brought up Tetairoa McMillan, you said, man, I feel like this would be the perfect situation, a perfect pairing to put him, pick 12 to the Dallas Cowboys, 6'5", 215 pounds, coming off of a season where he caught, 84 receptions of 84 of his 130 targets, 1,300 yards, 8 receiving touchdowns. He averaged almost 16 yards per catch. Back-to-back 1,300 plus yards seasons, Keith, and putting him with he would be probably, I think this probably would be the perfect pairing in a sense for the Cowboys. It makes the most sense. Like, instead of, we talked about Matthew Golden yesterday and how like that's been something I've looked at as like, I'm perfectly fine putting them at 12. But if Tetairoa McMillan falls to the Dallas Cowboys, you run that card up. You don't even think about it. Jerry Jones, don't say nothing. Just hand the card. Let it go. You know what I mean? You pick a Tetairoa McMillan 6'5", 215 to be your X that complements CeeDee Lamb and with everything that CeeDee Lamb brings to the table perfectly, Keith. So I don't mind this fit at all. If he were to land with Dallas, will he drop the 12? We'll see. But I think that would be a really good fit. But I'm gonna let you go. But I got another NFC East team that I think I wouldn't be mad if they moved up for him.
Okay, cool. So Tetairoa McMillan, looking at him in context of the Dallas Cowboys, right, and why this could potentially be a good fit is that you mentioned CeeDee Lamb, right? And CeeDee Lamb is a movement piece, right? You got to put him in the slot, put him at outside sometimes, those type of situations. I feel like Tetairoa McMillan, or we've seen it on film, this guy can operate solely as an X, right? He has the opportunity to make the field balanced for the Cowboys in the sense of the fact of, like, you can be like, hey, CeeDee Lamb, you operate over here, and then I'll operate over here, right? Like, he can get it done by himself, and you don't have to cater everything to based off of his alignment, because he can win outside and inside. And that's why I like T-Mac so much. And then also another thing, with these big wide receivers, right, and what's the presence for them is keeping the chains moving, right? You're talking about 3rd and 5. Let's just run a slant, right? Like, why does everything have to be the most miraculous play call ever, right? Like, we have to get it. Like, no, just simply run a slant. You win, right? Beat your guy, and I'm gonna throw the football to you. And it should be that simple sometimes, DP. But that's why I'm looking at it from that perspective. And I say T-Mac there. I think about them. It's been a while. And I mean, Amari Cooper was a big wide receiver presence in a certain facet, but it's been since then, one, that they've had 2 viable receiving options, and then secondly, that they've had a big-bodied wide receiver that offered physicality on the outside. Then we're talking about just simply even throwing hitches and curls on 1st, 2nd, 3rd down, and this guy can just work back to the football, catch the football, get down. That's the chain moving plays right there. That's just you. That's 1 versus 1. You beat your man, and so that's why I like Tetairoa McMillan in Dallas.
And I think, like you said, you brought up Amari Cooper. I'll go all the way back to Dez Bryant. They haven't had a true ball. Like, don't get me wrong. CeeDee Lamb makes very good contested catches, but they haven't had that ball winner on a back shoulder fade that can consistently live on the outside to like we saw from Dez. Dez wasn't 6'4", like 6'5", but Dez wasn't covered. Like, you know what I mean? Even if you in the hip pocket, he can elevate, he can get 2 feet in, back shoulder fade, he can go over the top of you, take the ball off, off the roof. Like, he could do all those things. And Tetairoa McMillan, arguably, the only guy I think truthfully in this class that I say rivals him in ball skills is Travis Hunter. You know what I mean? In terms of being able to go up, make those ridiculous acrobatic catches. I think Travis Hunter is the only guy in there. Shout out to Nick Nash. Nick Nash does like outstanding in that right too, but he only plays in the slot. Like, he's not an outside receiver at all. So when I look at Tetairoa McMillan, that fit, I think, it gives them that ball winner that they need. And like you said, that alleviates some of the pressure off CD. And if you still want to double CD, that's fine. That means I get one-on-one with potentially your CB2, CB3, and then also Tetairoa McMillan is alignment versatile as well. He plays the X, the Z, and the slot. Like, he plays all over the Arizona Wildcats offense. So, Keith, but for me, I thought about a team that if he starts to fall, I think, and you tell me how you feel about this, Keith. I think, and I watched the tape. It's not really his fault. For whatever reason, the OC decided to run 13 personnel a lot in Arizona. But when Marvin Harrison, like, people looking at what Malik Neighbors did and the way you can get him to manufacture touches and the different playmaking style and stuff like that, and Marvin Harrison not hitting 1,000 yards, he still had a successful rookie year compared to what the type of targets he was getting. I think that could negatively impact Tetairoa McMillan a little bit. And then the struggles of Drake London, even though truthfully it wasn't Drake London's fault. He had one of the worst quarterback situations in the league since he got drafted.
Yep.
You know what I mean? I think that could knock Tetairoa McMillan down just a tad and where he might be in range for the Cowboys. But if I'm the Commanders, I don't mind trading up if I could, to be honest with you. I know Commanders fans be like, we got some other need. Yeah, listen, you do. But what happened when you played Philly? It was scary Terry or bust. Like,
you didn't have the dogs in a race. In that game, you just didn't have them.
You didn't. So it's like, you can't. I don't want to send Jaden Daniels into year 2, knowing, because Keith, the one thing we know, the offseason defensive coordinator, especially in your division, they game plan for you and what you did well and what you caught them off guard with. So it's like, okay, him and Scary Terry, that's an elite connection between those two. Fine. Now, I did talk to somebody in Washington that said that be on the lookout for Ben Sinnott, the tight end coach. From what I was told, per quote, he's excited to get him implemented and put into that offense in 2025. So they expected him to be their starter. Depends on what happened with Zach Ertz. So you kind of have to you hope that takes shape and he gets a full head of steam. But you got to go get another receiver. Like, I like De'Ami Brown. I think Olamide Zacchaeus, I think, is one of the other ones. Mm-hmm. Those are good ancillary pieces. Go get you a true wide receiver too to pair with Scary Terry. If Benson not hits, now you got your tight end of the future. You got your 2 wide receivers, and Jaden Daniels not only is the offensive rookie of the year this year, you do this, and Jaden Daniels might be the MVP in 2025 if you play it right.
No, I agree. You have to take steps forwards, DP, and you want to have the mentality of every year we're trying to get better, right? Like, we're not trying to come out the exact version as we were last year. And I think if the Commanders are honest with themselves, you see some of those, because they call them the cardiac commanders, everything went down to the wire. You say, okay, on a normal year, we probably split that, right? And if we probably split that, that means we're barely a playoff team, right? And then so we have to get better to put ourselves as one of those top 3 teams roster-wise in the NFC. And I think Tetairoa McMillan added to this roster can help take steps forward to that direction. But DP, we are staying in – no, we're going to the AFC. I'm sorry. I was about to say we're staying in the NFC. It's time to get out of the NFC, DP. It's time to go to the AFC. We're going to tell you, where did we place Matthew Golden, the electric playmaking wide receiver from University of Texas? We're going to talk about that coming up next.
The big game is almost here, and there's no better way to make it even more exciting than with PrizePicks, the best place for daily fantasy sports. With over 10 million members and billions in winnings awarded, PrizePicks makes it fun and simple to get in on the action. Here's how it works. You pick more or less on at least 2 player projections, and if you're right, you can win up to 1,000 times your money in cash. PrizePicks even has a free pick for the big game where Patrick Mahomes only needs to throw 1 yard to win. Pair that with one more correct pick, and guess what, guys? You're cashing out. So download the app today and use the code Locked On NFL to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Again, download the app today and use the code Locked On NFL to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Locked On NFL for $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. PrizePicks, run your game. Thank you for making Locked On NFL Draft your first listen today and everyday shot, for being our everydayers. Texas star wide receiver, guy that came in not on the radar as wide receiver 1 for Texas, but he became the wide receiver 1 for Texas. Matthew Golden, our guy, 6'1" or 6 foot. I believe he's listed at like 195.
190. Yeah, 190.
190. Yep. Got it. Good route runner, great hands. I believe he only had like 3 drops on the season, I believe. Like, he plays on the outside. He can play in the slot if you need him to. He can win, ball winner himself, can get open, explosiveness, dynamic playmaker with legit speed to really hurt you down the field or even after the catch. And Keith, you said, I think the perfect fit for him is the Baltimore Ravens. And I love that a lot, simply because of the fact of, yes, Rashad Bateman took a step this year. You have Isaiah Likely, who, to me, even if you brought back Mark Andrews, Likely needs to be the tight end 1. And that's just bar none. Likely is your best tight end playmaker, and you need to implement him as such. Like, it's all over their film. Get him the ball, and good things will happen. So whether you have those two, whatever, you got Zay Flowers, who you missed the whole entire playoffs because of a leg injury. When you lost him, you lost your wide receiver 1. Put Matthew Golden in this offense, Rashad Bateman, Zay Flowers, Isaiah Likely, and Matthew Golden as that your top 4 passing options. That makes Nelson Aguilar barely see the field besides special teams, which I'm perfectly fine with. Like, I think in that situation, Keith, Lamar Jackson has to feel good to walk out of the huddle going up against a Patrick Mahomes who has Xavier Worthy and Rashee Rice and DeAndre Hopkins potentially coming back, and Travis Kelce and all that, or Joe Burrow, who's had T. Higgins and Tyler Boyd and Jamar Chase his entire career, or at least the start of his career, while Lamar Jackson was out there with the cupboard has been bare at the receiver position for most of his career in Baltimore. So putting Matthew Golden there, giving them whether he comes in, he's probably, to me, he'll be obviously 1A to 1B to Zay Flowers, and that will honestly push Rashad Bateman to that wide receiver 3 spot, which I think would be a good spot for him.
Yeah, DP, I go back to this, right? And I don't even think we even talked about the reaction to that Ravens Bills game, right? In the Bills losing, we haven't talked about this, but my take on it was very similar to last year. They stopped running the football, right? And so I want the Ravens to make a decision on who they are, right? Because you can't run the football the entire season. And I didn't even know this, DP, until I was watching. I think it was the second playoff game. Derrick Henry had 1,800 yards rushing, I believe, in the regular season. Like, he was right behind Saquon Barkley. Nobody just talked about it, right? Like, this guy was close to cracking 2,000 again, right? And so my point was that the loss of identity. So I said, okay, cool, Ravens. If this is what you want to do, you want to run the football in the regular season and then get to the playoffs, and for whatever reason you want to throw it all over the field, you need more playmakers, right? Like let's be completely honest. Rashad Bateman has been there for 5 years. You drafted him in the first round. He has not performed like a first round draft pick. Has he performed like a second round draft pick? Has he performed like a third round draft pick, right? There's questions, and I'm just talking about in totality of his entire career. There are moments, DP, but when a quarterback is giving you the football, or your offense is dependent on you, I need to know that you're going to show up, right? And you have to be consistent in that throughout a long period of time for people to be able to buy in. So I look at invoking Matthew Golden into this. Zay Flowers going down was very unfortunate because he's their electric guy, right? And I look at a Matthew Golden and I say he's a bigger He's not exactly Zay Flowers, but he's a bigger version of offering some of the same things, meaning stretching the field vertically, route running, quickness, right? You want to throw a quick screen to Zay Flowers, or do you want to throw the bubble screen to Matthew Golden on the perimeter, right? Like now I have options. Now I have balance. Now you can't just double Zay Flowers. I have another guy that can take the top off, but also work the short to intermediate if you feel like Lamar Jackson is not on his A game, right? Like if you feel like, hey, he has some jitters, well, give him some layups to get him comfortable. Matthew Golden, I feel like utilized in a similar fashion to what Zay Flowers is, plus everything he does down the field, could be a layup for Lamar Jackson.
Heck, I mean, you look at the Chiefs game against Buffalo. Like Andy Reid was calling layups for Patrick Mahomes.
Yes, he
bubble
was.
Screens, like wide receiver screen, just getting the ball out of his hands and letting their athletic playmakers make plays. Like I agree with that wholeheartedly, Keith, because without Zay Flowers, they didn't have that chain that guy that can move the chains like on third downs consistently at the receiver position. They didn't have that quick twitch guy that could just get open in the hiccup. They didn't have that. And I think you put Matthew Golden in this offense along with a healthy Zay Flowers. Now you got because Zay and Rashad Bateman technically all three of these guys can move around, but Zay and Rashad Bateman, you can create mismatches where, like for me, I love to see like those type of receivers come out, we break the huddle, and they're in the backfield, line up at running back. Now I motion them out into the slot, and I got a linebacker on them. I'm like, okay, so it's man coverage, and I got Patrick Queen if I'm playing the Steelers guarding Zay Flowers. Yeah, I'm running that whip route in the heartbeat. You know what I mean? I'm changing directions on them, and that's my pinpoint. Or I'll put Rashad Bateman in the slot, and I got him against a safety, and he's a really good route runner and separator. Guess what? I'm going right to that matchup, and I'm letting him make that play. So I think Matthew Golden, 100%, Keith, I think that will be a perfect situation. Whether or not, I mean, some people may think it's crazy that we say this. He might not even fall that far. We get to the combine and he tear it up, he might not even fall that far.
No, I agree, DP. And that's when I looked at it. I'm like, 27, right? I think that's what what range it'll be for the Baltimore Ravens. And I was like, truth is, he may not get this far, right? But that's okay. I do like it, and we'll see just whatever the testing numbers are. But I think honestly, what we're landing on is that Baltimore Ravens pick a wide receiver you like and draft them, right? Like they're guys you need to be able to go get to be able to insulate this offense furthermore.
100%, Keith. I mean, I know Ravens fans probably like, listen, part of the reason why we couldn't run the ball is because Daniel Falele was out there getting beat left and right, which they need to improve that guard situation in the offensive line just a little bit, figure out what they're going to do with Ronnie Stanley. But I think Ronnie Stanley's going to stay. You give him a contract, I think he'll be there. But they got to upgrade that right guard spot. Luckily, there's some tackles that can kick down at the guard in this draft, and that you can improve that situation. But I would absolutely look at wide receiver, especially early in round 127. Like, Matthew Golden fall. Heck, maybe you look at, a Luther Burden. You look at a guy that could just come in and be a playmaker for you and just allow Lamar Jackson to just get into rhythm. Like you said, give him those layups. There's a couple guys in this draft that can absolutely fill that role, Keith. So, now 100%. Baltimore, if you want to, they run the ball a lot in the regular season, and then they flip the switch and start passing it all over the yard. And Todd Monken got to figure that out. He's got a contract extension for them. When we get to the playoffs, big dog, let's run Derrick Henry. You know what I mean? Let's get Derrick Henry really, really going consistently. Maybe also draft another running back too. Draft another hammer to take some of that pressure off of Derrick Henry. Maybe a Marion Hampton, maybe a Caleb Johnson. You know what I'm saying? Ollie Gordon, if you want to wait to the third, fourth round, whatever. Like, go get another big back that can absolutely fill in, because when Henry goes to the sideline, it's like smaller backs, Keaton Mitchell, and stuff like that. Justice Hill, like you don't have that same punch. And I think if they get another guy like that, they'll be good.
Yep, I agree. With DP, that wraps up another episode, man, of the Locked On NFL Draft Podcast. I want to end this podcast off by saying shout out to our everydayers. Thank you for tapping in with us each and every single day. Every listen is greatly appreciated here on Locked On NFL Draft. I am Keith Sanchez. You can find me on X at The Talent Code. That right there is my guy, my co-host, Mr. Damian Parson. You can find him on X at DP_NFL. And like we like to say, man, y'all come talk to us, because we like to talk back.
Go subscribe and follow for free on YouTube, wherever you listen to podcasts, to get the latest episode as soon as it is available. Guys, on tomorrow's show, we're going to get into ranking our top 10 edge rushers for the 2025 NFL Draft post Senior Bowl, right? We saw a lot of those guys down in Mobile who stood out. Mike Green, Donovan Ezeroku, stuff like that. Where are these guys going to land on our top 10 edge rusher list? We'll talk about that on tomorrow's show. So come and join the conversation again tomorrow on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.